I would like you to imagine waking up one morning to find your newsroom cut off, emails shut down, phones disconnected. No way to reach your editors, even know if your job still exists. That's exactly what happened to journalists recently at Voice of America. And the ripple effects are still streaming through our industry, with many commenting, editorials everywhere, and that's going to be our topic today. Greetings, I am Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P Magazine. Welcome to this episode of E&P Reports, and I'm joined by Steve Herman. Steve, welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mike.
You are not in the offices of VOA, I assume. You are where right now?
I'm at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. We're not allowed to go to our offices.
So I hear. Just to give some quick background, you are a well-known veteran journalist. You're currently listed as the VOA Chief National Correspondent. I'm assuming you still kind of have that title. Am I correct?
I have not been relieved of my title or fired from my job, but since February 28th, slightly before 1,300 of my colleagues were given similar notices, I was informed that I was immediately placed on a, quote, excused absence. And there was a reference in the letter that was sent to me to a executive order the president had signed 2 weeks previous to that, which noted that those deemed disloyal in the foreign service to the president's foreign policy could be suspended or relieved of their jobs. I need to explain, Mike, technically I am a foreign service officer of the United States government under the U.S. Agency for Global Media, but I'm a journalist first and foremost, and as you may know, although I'm not sure everybody in the audience would know, that there's a firewall between the Voice of America newsroom and our parent agency and the rest of the government per se. And we operate under a charter, which is also a law, that we must be a fair and balanced news operation, and we must tell both sides of America's story.
We are going to offer a link to the VOA charter on the landing page for this episode. We're also going to chat with a man who we believe is still employed by the federal government. We're not sure, but we're going to dive into all of that right after this. Stick around.
This episode of E&P Reports is exclusively sponsored by Blocks Digital, formerly Town News. Even though the name has changed, their commitment to the media industry is as strong as ever. Blocks Digital is now even better positioned to deliver integrated solutions like content management, audience development, advertising revenue, video management, and more. Join the over 2,000 news publishers worldwide that power their ongoing digital transformation with Blocks Digital, serving over 141 million monthly users who view over 6.5 billion pages of content each year. You can trust Blocks Digital to empower you, to connect you at scale with the community you need to reach. Blocks Digital, formerly Town News, now reimagined to help meet the news publishing challenges of tomorrow and beyond. Learn more at blocksdigital.com.
All right, Steve, before we get into what's going on with you and your colleagues, first, talk to me about VOA. Maybe some of us don't touch it in the industry. I mean, I know it's heritage. I actually posted a quote from Edward R. Murrow about the founding of this organization. What kind of journalism did or should or were you guys producing at VOA, and what audience did it serve? Can you give us just the overall elevator pitch, please?
Yeah, Mike. Voice of America went on the air in the early days of World War II, and it was somewhat unique in its approach. It said, whether the news is good or bad, we're going to tell you the truth. And that first broadcast was in German. Hitler was not amused. Pal Crosley, an entrepreneur out of Cincinnati who owned WLW Radio, was tasked by the U.S. government under wartime conditions to quickly erect a transmitting site for what would become the Voice of America. It went on the air, and Adolf Hitler quickly referred to it as those Cincinnati liars. And ever since, we have been the bane of autocratic leaders around the world. We relish in this criticism because that means that it's effective. Now, there's not a lot of reason that Americans would know about Voice of America unless you've lived overseas or you moved to the United States and grew up in a different country. You probably were not aware of it. It's an external broadcasting service. We do not target Americans or a U.S. audience. It is 100% funded and part of the federal government. And although we started out, as I said, on shortwave radio, because that was the only way to reach East Europe and Asia at the time, we mostly have been doing in recent decades television news. And there's still some radio, and there's the website. We're on all the big digital apps in 50 different languages, reaching several hundred million people on a weekly basis, or we were until a little more than a week ago.
Some say it's not relevant anymore. There's so many different ways that people around the world are gaining their news. Why have this U.S. channel available? Can you speak to that?
Sure.
As an employee there, but also as a journalist, is VOA's role still relevant in your opinion in today's society?
Yeah, and I would add that I've researched this as a scholar of public diplomacy as well, and I wrote a book about it called Behind the White House Curtain, which goes into some of the history and why VOA is important and what happened in the first Trump administration as well. It's relevant because, as you well know, there's a lot of disinformation and misinformation floating out there. But we're not a commercial operation. We're not ratings driven. We broadcast in languages that probably no one else does, like to the Rohingya, who are in these refugee camps across the border from Burma and Bangladesh. We broadcast in Tibet. We broadcast in Burmese. And in those languages, there may be no independent, credible voice, whether it's radio, television, the internet, or whatever. And we have a tremendous reach. We broadcast into North Korea. That's one of the target countries where we still do use medium wave and shortwave radio. We have several thousand affiliates around the world carrying our program. We have more than, just in Indonesia alone, 100 FM stations that carry VOA programming in Bahasa Indonesia. So that's just a tiny sample of, what is this operation? And when I would walk in the building, Mike, it was like, it's the United Nations of broadcasting. You have these journalists from all over the world, some of them who fled their countries because they were going to be put in jail. Some of them had been put into jail. There are some US AGM journalists who are in prison right now because US AGM oversees not only Voice of America, but Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Radio Free Asia. There's the Mideast Broadcasting Networks, Radio Sawa, and Al Hurra Television in Arabic, and the Office of Cuba Broadcasting, which has radio and TV Marti, as well as the Open Technology Fund, which helps people who are behind these great digital firewalls where the internet is free internet is cut off to them, tells them how to use VPNs and other services to get around that. So there's a lot of missions going on, and U.S. international broadcasting that's funded by the U.S. government is the largest such operation in the world.
In a way,
it was.
I mean, our Madisonian democracy, the document written by imperfect men, which I call the perfect document that we are supposed to live by, is the Constitution, and in it, it states our industry. We're the only industry, the news, media, or journalism, press, that's mentioned in that document as to be free and unfettered. And that's why that charter you referenced before the break is so critical, correct? It's kind of like that firewall where here we are funded by the government, but we are free and unfettered. In light of recent events, do you think that charter's been compromised? In your opinion, sir, you and your colleagues, if you could speak to it.
Well, I think we're going to see that question perhaps answered to some degree in courts of law in future weeks and months. All I can do is say, when I joined the Voice of America, Mike, I swore an oath to the Constitution. I did not swear an oath to whoever was president at the time or to a political party. And in my conscience, I cannot swerve from that oath that I took, regardless of whatever the consequences are going to be to me. I take it very seriously. I can tell you my 1,300 colleagues take it absolutely seriously. This is the mandate. This is the charter. And we had a tussle about this in the first Trump administration, where I was among those targeted by political appointees, and we fought back. We fought back in the courts. We fought back in the court of public opinion, as I'm doing now by talking to you. And there was an Office of Special Counsel investigation, Office of Inspector General investigation, as well as some court rulings which exonerated us and said that the political appointees had stepped over the line and appeared to have done things that were not legal.
All right, so let's dive into your world, yours and your colleagues. Have you been paid? I mean, since that date in February, are you getting a
Yes,
check?
I got a paycheck last week.
Okay.
So I was put on leave indefinitely with pay. Who knows what the situation will be in the days ahead?
Do you know if all your colleagues are in the same position, or are you not?
Well, no. So most of them are those who are civil servants, full-time employees of Voice of America. However, there are I think it's about 550 people that were on personal service contracts, as they're called. And in the newsroom, I don't know who's a full-time employee, a civil service, a contractor. They're reporters, they're editors, they're technicians, they're engineers. We don't differentiate, right? We're all on the same team doing the same work. But those 550 contractors, so to speak, were notified that their services are no longer needed, and that their contracts would be terminated effective March 31st.
So if they throw the switch back on tomorrow, you have depleted resources the moment you go in.
Well, Mike, like a lot of newsrooms around the United States, I would argue we already had depleted resources before all of this happened. That people were just working their butts off all the time. So if there were to be some sort of judicial ruling, perhaps by the end of the month, saying you cannot terminate those contractors and you have to bring everybody who's suspended back to work, yeah, we could get the operation back up. But I sort of see the damage that's already been done since our programming's been off off the air for nearly a week as we speak. The audiences are going somewhere else,
Exactly.
right? Though the vacuum is going to be filled by the voices from Beijing, from Moscow, from Pyongyang, from Tehran, and that's why it's critical for us to get back on the air as soon as possible.
I mean, I'm not editorializing here. It's a fact that when VOA was shut down, the propaganda from Moscow was very positive. Correct? I mean,
Yeah.
this is a
Ask
windfall.
yourself, why is the state-controlled press, and why is the Kremlin, and why is the Chinese Foreign Ministry celebrating this?
Exactly. I spent 25 years as a media consultant traveling worldwide. I gave workshops in Russia. I worked in, believe it or not, some of the places that you were VOA's bureau chief. I worked
If
in.
they invite you to Russia right now, Mike, I don't think
I
you should
wouldn't.
take them up on the offer.
When I was there, it was a long time ago.
Different situation. Yes.
But I've done workshops in South Korea. I've trained media reps in Thailand. I've been around the world, even Saudi Arabia, where the women were in a separate room and had to pass their questions to me.
Wow.
No, but you like me have seen the world as a media person. Correct me if I'm wrong, but as you were working in South Korea or anywhere in Asia, America was respected, right? I mean, I always felt no matter if they didn't like our politics or what have you, people were always just feeling good about where America was.
I'll give you a perfect example of that, Mike.
Please.
We would know of these politicians in these various countries. Some were allied, perhaps, with the United States. Some were not. But even those who are most critical of the United States and would tell us so in interviews, a lot of them were sending their kids to college in the United States.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you?
I used to have people out, I remember when George W. Bush was president, there was like this negative feeling. And I travel and they would comment and say, how did he become president? By the way, do you know of any jobs there? It's in the same conversation.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there's a I mean, I have to ask you as an international media person who's been around the world and worked those beats, do you feel that our brand is diminished in the world at all?
Well, I can tell you something. I have a friend. He's an immigration lawyer. He's on vacation outside of the United States right now. And he said, and he goes, travels around the world. And he says, anytime he tells people he's an immigration lawyer in the United States, they want his advice on how to get a visa, how to get a green card. He said on this trip, nobody's asking him that.
Yeah, one way to cut back on immigration. It's awful. Sorry because it's a weird time. So let's go back to 50,000 feet as we bring our dialogue to the end. There has been a massive amount of media support for VOA. I mean, even a recent editorial from Lenfest Institute was amazing. I don't know if you saw it, that they put out, at the Philadelphia Inquirer. The feeling is that this is the beginning of even more suppression of free speech. At least that's what I'm hearing, and that's what we're reporting on at EMP. What concerns you've got the microphone now, you're there, you're talking to thousands of media executives. What concerns do you see being raised now in our industry by the reduction of publicly funded media? Do you see something, the cracks in the wall? What is your opinion on what's going on?
Well, first of all, we're very, very grateful from the outside support, from journalism organizations, from the public at large, from some on Capitol Hill. At this point, my caveat in giving these interviews is I'm speaking for myself when noting that as I'm doing this interview with you, I am still employed, although not allowed to work, by the Voice of America, which may or may not exist anymore. So I'm still a journalist, although I was under investigation for before the shutdown of the Voice of America for engaging in what was called speculation and analysis. So I do try to choose my words carefully, although I was not saying anything different on VOA broadcasts than I've said for 20 years. So make of that what you will. But I'm leaving the larger macro arguments and connecting the dots and what does this mean overall for our freedom of the press and society. There's a lot of other people who are much more, I would say, schooled and skilled in talking credibly about the subject that you would raise. But
Fair enough.
I will probably at some point in the future be maybe writing an op-ed or delivering some lectures about this very subject. But I'm kind of staying in my lane for right now.
Any path forward for you guys at VOA? Do you see any light right now, or is it still just a big question mark at the time of this recording, sir?
Well, as you've seen with other federal agencies that have been doged, so to speak,
yep.
The legal battles have begun. And initially, there are some favorable rulings for some of the people who work at those agencies. And in some other cases, the judges are not issuing restraining orders or injunctions. But that's a legal fight that'll probably go on for some time. And there's an expectation that some of these cases will go up to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court gets to hear them, it will set precedent one way or the other. But as you know, those things take a long time. And as far as I'm concerned, with VOA right now, it's at best, it's in a deep coma on life support, if there's any life left there. And so I would hope that the judicial system would look at the situation with U.S. International Broadcasting. RFERL, as we speak, has already filed suit because they're a grantee. They're not technically part of the federal government. And I would hope that the courts consider these cases the same way that they would consider a death penalty case, which is it's something that needs to be decided very quickly.
Of course. I mean, if E&P which has been publishing for over 140 years, were to be shut down for a month or two, I can't guarantee my audience will return instantly if I say, yeah, right. Come on back. We're back now. Sorry about that. Come on back. I can't guarantee that.
Right. In this case, we're talking about hundreds of millions of people who are used to receiving their news and information in almost 50 languages.
Of course. Steve Herman, veteran journalist, respected award-winning veteran journalist, currently listed as the House Bureau Chief for, you were previous House Bureau, White House Bureau Chief. Now you're Chief National Correspondent, or listed as such for VOA. Steve, thank you so much for your time. Please, on behalf of VMP, give our best and support to your brethren, co-workers, and more importantly, keep up the good fight, sir. We're behind you.
We will, Mike. We appreciate the attention and the support.